Everyone, my name is Molly. Thank you all for being here, and thank you to Skokie Public Library for having me. I am certainly not a professional chef. I am just someone who likes cooking, and so I'm here to share one of my really simple and foolproof recipes. And to make sure that I am actually following the recipe and not doing my own thing, I'm going to be following the recipe that I sent you all to make sure that it matches what I wrote and what I'm doing here. Because a lot of times when I'm doing something like this that I do on a regular basis, I won't measure. I'll just kind of freehand it and do it to taste. So not what we're going to do here, although we will talk about modifying the recipe to taste. I'm here in Washington, D.C. I'm assuming a lot of you are not. I'm assuming a lot of you are in the Skokie area. So again, thank you for having me. This is a Chinese recipe. I am Chinese. A lot of times I do Cantonese food because my family is from Hong Kong. This particular recipe, however, is not Cantonese. It's a recipe that has a lot of variations all over different parts of China and other parts of Asia. So there are versions in Taiwan and there are versions in Japan. So that should speak to how flexible and variable it can be. Once we have the basic recipe, we'll talk about how we can modify it to suit our own needs and tastes. Another really nice thing about this recipe is it is gluten-free, carb-free, and nut-free. So if you are looking to have something you can share with people that have a lot of dietary restrictions, if you have a potluck and you're not sure what the different restrictions that people have are, this can be a great thing that you won't run into a lot of trouble with. So this is what we call a quick pickle. There's no long pickling process. We're not going to boil anything. We're not going to can anything. This is something that you can make, and then pretty much as soon as it's made, you can eat. I know a lot of traditional pickles have longer processes, but not this one. This one is super easy. And then once you make it, it can stay in the fridge for maybe 3 to 5 days. And as it sits, the flavors will get stronger and stronger. So yeah. Other things that you should know before we actually start chopping things. I believe Rick is watching the chat for me, so feel free to ask questions whenever you have them, and whenever there is a little bit of time to answer them, he will jump in and help me know that they're there and that I should answer them. And then I am using today a cleaver. Looks like this. It's big, it's heavy. And so some basic knife safety things so that nobody hurts themselves if you're following along. I love a cleaver. It's good for chopping really intense stuff like through bone, but it can also be really great for slicing stuff because it has this nice heavy handle and it doesn't take a lot of effort to push things. In terms of knife safety, don't wave the knife around. I'm doing it, not a good idea. We don't want blood in our food. That's definitely not an ideal ingredient. Other ways to prevent that, always push the knife away from you, right? So we're gonna push down and away as we make each cut. We're never gonna cut towards ourselves. Whenever we cut, we're gonna make kind of like a nice claw shape with our fingers, and we're gonna cut against our knuckles, right? So that we can't cut our fingertips off. That's pretty bad. And then, let's see. We said don't mess around, right? Don't swing them around. We said always push away from yourself, and we said always hold with your knuckles. I think those are, that's good, right? Let's talk about the ingredients that we're using. You got an ingredient list, and I'm going to go straight down it to make sure that everyone knows what we're talking about and when. So I am using today a English cucumber. You may be more familiar with kind of like the American garden cucumbers that are kind of shorter, rounder, and smoother. I like the English cucumber for this because it's got a whole bunch of snap and it has less water in it, so it has more crunch and more body. If you don't want to use one of these, the little Persian cucumbers are also really good because they're a lot like this, but they're smaller, and smaller often means, in my totally unprofessional opinion, smaller a lot of times means kind of like more fun and cute and nicer looking, at least when it comes to food. Mini food, so fun. The next ingredient on the list is Asian rice vinegar. I'm using this Mizukan rice vinegar, and believe it or not, it has the recipe for their version of this salad. They call it sunomono in Japan. They have it right on the back, so you know this has got to be good for it. If you don't have this rice vinegar, you could use pretty much any other vinegar. It'll just taste a little different, but all it really takes to make a pickle is vinegar or salt. So if you've got one or the other, go for it. I have even done this with like red wine vinegar or a little balsamic vinegar if I've run out of this and I really, really want a little bit of pickle flavor. Like I said, these are infinitely flexible. Ooh, that's not next on the list. Next on the list is sugar. I put it in a bowl. It just makes it easier to spoon out instead of using a big bag while we're recording. Salt. I have kosher salt. You don't have to use kosher salt. You can use any kind of salt you want. You can use fancy salt that has flavors in it if you want. You can use table salt. I use kosher salt for a lot of my cooking, so it's just what I have in my little 4 container. And then sesame oil. Sesame oil, this one, if you smell it, it has kind of a nutty, brown type scent. It's very, very fragrant. And so while you can cook with sesame oil, you can also use it for what we call finishing a dish. And finishing a dish means pouring a little bit over it to just give it a little extra flavor at the end. And so that is really nice. We're gonna pour this over at the end to give it a good fragrance. It's more smell than it is taste. And if you don't have sesame oil, you don't need to add in canola oil or olive oil. This is really about the smell and not necessarily the consistency of the oil. So if you don't have this, I would say just leave it out. And then it says if you have some chopped herbs. This week I've got cilantro because that's what I've been cooking with anyway. They're fresh, we will be chopping them. But if you don't have fresh, you could use dried basil or cilantro or parsley. You could go a little wild. You could try something like garlic or cumin to get a little extra flavor in there. Like I said, this is a great recipe to experiment with. So I've got some of these, and if we want to try some of them at the end, we can. And then the ultimate will you, won't you, is there are a lot of places, there are a lot of variations of this dish that put in a hot something. So I'm going to pull this right up to the camera so you can get a good look at this. This is chili garlic paste. And so it's definitely got the garlic flavor. It's definitely got the hot flavor in there. And if you're cooking for people who love hot, go ahead and load it in. If you're cooking for people who can't handle it, obviously don't. This one is a good brand, I think, this chili garlic paste, because it's not too hot, but you can layer on as much as you want, and then it'll really layer on the heat. So it's, again, easily adaptable. But you could use any hot sauce you've got. If you've got sriracha, that's great. If you've got something that's a little bit thicker, if you've got fresh chilies, you can chop those and put them in. This is also really great accompaniment to hot food. So if you've got like a really spicy main dish, this is a great way to cool off in between bites. All right. I should stop talking and start chopping, right? Does anyone have any questions about the ingredients before we get started?
I've got nothing in the chat waiting yet.
Great. So I'm going to show you two ways to chop these. The first is the way that I described in the recipe, which is the smashing technique. And then I'm going to show you a slightly different technique that's a little more, less rustic, more elegant, you might say. So I am actually going to see if we can't zoom in a little bit so you can see the chopping up close. There we go. Hopefully this will get you a slightly better view. And to start, hands in a claw, pushing away. And I'm going to cut it in half, just so that we know what half will be smashed and what half will be sliced. I'm going to put my slicing half over here and show you how to do the smashing first. So to do the smashing, we're going to cut this into chunks about 1 inch long. So you can see it's about that. I'm going to go slice. I'm going to take another inch, slice, another inch, then the last inch. Be careful with this one. Sometimes it's easier actually to turn it around so that your hand is holding the longer part, and then you can cut off the end. If you are a no-waste cooker, if you have a no-waste kitchen, you can certainly include this. A lot of people cut it off just because they think it's a little tougher by the end. It's totally up to you. There's no wrong answer. I just eat them as I go because it's my kitchen and I can do what I want. On to the smashing. Smashing. So I have my piece. Skin side up. I'm going to take my cleaver and I'm going to smash my palm against it like this so that it squishes the cucumber. Ready? Ta-da! Now, I'll bring this up. You can see we have bite-sized smashed cucumbers. Woo! And what I'm going to do, let's take my very official, very professional Tupperware. It's clear so you can see through it. I'm going to put the pieces in there. If some are a little stuck together, you can just give them a little pull apart. And I'm going to move on to the next one. So skin side up, spatula on it. Keep your hand nice and flat so you don't hurt yourself. And smash. Perfect bite-sized pieces that we can then pull apart and put into our Tupperware. If for any reason you don't feel super comfortable slamming your hand into a giant knife, and I recognize that not everyone's going to feel comfortable with that, a wooden spoon or a spatula is a great way to kind of ease into the process. It's still flat, it's still a little bit heavy, but if you misland on your hand a little bit, it's not going to hurt. So let me show you how this works. Pretty much exactly the same. You can see we still get nice bite-sized pieces of cucumber. One more time with the spatula, skin up, spatula on, smash. It's also a great way if you're cooking with kids and you want to let them into this part, you can have them use a spatula or a wooden spoon to do the smashing. Kids love the smashing. and you don't have to worry about them handling a big knife. But I frankly think the cleaver is fun, and also it's one less dish that I need to wash when I'm done. So that is why I use the cleaver. It's really satisfying. It's a great way to finish out your day. I am on the East Coast, so I'm an hour ahead of you guys. So it's just about 8 o'clock for me. I'm going to grab my second Tupperware so that I can show you how to slice. Now this slicing is very delicate. You're basically trying to slice as thinly as you can. So I'm going to go very carefully on the first one to show you just how thin we're slicing them. If you had a mandolin, this is a great use for the mandolin because you get nice, even, thin slices. So in the beginning, you might do this very carefully, like that. Nice thin slices. If you're not careful, you might do something. Let's see if I can show you intentionally. Ah, I did it. If you're not careful, you're going to get little half slices like this. It's completely fine. They'll pickle fine. They'll taste fine. They just don't look quite as nice. So it's, you know, don't feel bad if it doesn't look perfect. Just keep going. And with these, if you're sawing back and forth, you might get little marks that let people see that you've been sawing. So I try to push down with one nice, even cut, even if it means that some are a little thicker, some are maybe those half slices. That's okay, because this is home cooking. And home cooking is all about getting a meal on the table that people can enjoy. We don't worry quite so much about what it looks like. So let's see, I'll show you. This is what we call a good slice. It's nice and thin. It wiggles a little as I move it. And this is what we might call a rustic slice, right? It's about twice as thick, but I'm not worried about it. And if you're following along, you don't need to be worried about it either. Just put them all into that Tupperware. Keep going. This is such a nice and easy recipe. If you make maybe 2 or 3 cucumbers worth at the beginning of the week, you can eat it as if it were a salad for the rest of the week. It's nice, it's light, it stays crunchy. You don't need to worry about it wilting if you eat it for a few days in a row. I really like it with just a little bit of rice and some fried eggs. It's a perfect meal to me. Nothing complicated, just good, tasty, easy to make food. It's not to say I don't enjoy making complicated food. I love a good cooking adventure. A few weeks ago, I made stuffed chilies. I stuffed them with cheese and deep fried them. So, you know, everything in its place. But
Molly, I do have a question.
Yeah.
This is from Jeffrey. He's asking if you do you ever peel the cucumber or peel it in stripes?
Let me tilt this up so you can see my face while I answer that. Yes, absolutely. You can definitely peel it. I would say for this recipe, having the skin on gives a little bit of snap. So if you want to peel it, I would suggest peeling in stripes. That way you've got a really nice pattern, but you still get a little bit of that snap. I just don't peel them because it's faster, and I try to do as low to a no-waste kitchen as I can. It's a great question, though.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I think you'll find if you order at a Chinese restaurant, it'll be unpeeled, and if you order at a Japanese restaurant, it'll be striped peeled a lot of the time. In my very exhaustive ordering experience, which is to say, not at all. All right, we've got them smashed, we've got them sliced. Now we need to start making them into actual pickles, and that means salting them. Like I said, I've got kosher salt here. You can use any kind of salt you like.
Got another question about using carrots or cauliflower. Would you blanch them first?
That is a great question. This is a fantastic recipe to use on any kind of vegetable. If I do carrots, I don't blanch them. I cut them into really thin matchsticks, and that is enough to get the kind of pickling process going because there's a big enough surface area to inside area ratio. So carrots, no, as long as you cut them really thinly to let the mixture penetrate. Cauliflower, yes, you might want to blanch that. It's a little harder. If you don't want to blanch it, the alternative is just letting it sit for maybe a full 24 hours before you eat it. This is a fantastic recipe for carrots though. And then if you throw the pickled carrots onto a salad, oh, so good. Also as a sandwich topper, so good. Just throw a bunch of pickled carrots onto a sandwich. So good. Where was I? Salting. My salt shaker pours out an even ½ teaspoon every time I shake it. So I'm going to put a little more than ½ teaspoon on each. And then what I'm going to do, again, I'm home cooking. If you're cooking for a crowd, you might want to use a spoon, glove, you could grab that spatula again, but I'm home cooking. I'm going to eat this myself, and I've washed my hands. So I'm just going to use my hands to mix, because that way I can feel the salt evenly going around the carrot. Sorry, not carrots, the cucumbers. This way I can evenly disperse the salt over the cucumbers. All right, that's nicely mixed. This one's nicely mixed. Gonna wash my hands real quick. Ooh, the magic that happens off camera. You cannot see my sink. I'm gonna dry my hands. It's always good to have a kitchen towel on hand when you're cooking, right? All right, so I'm gonna set a timer for 10 minutes because that's how long we're gonna salt these. Clever me, my alarm was already set to count down from 10 minutes, so that'll be easy to keep track of. Let's talk about why we salt. Well, first, salting is one of the ways you make pickles, so that's a good way to start the pickling process. And then secondly, and perhaps more importantly for these babies, is salting helps start to release some of the water that's kept inside the pickles. So we like to get some of the excess water out. And then we'll have a denser, slightly crunchier pickle when we're done. It's pretty crazy. You can see it start almost immediately. If you can see, you might notice that these look almost like they're sweating. They're like glistening, and that's because the water is already starting to come out. That's pretty cool. Those are there. When we get to the end of the 10 minutes, you'll notice that these will probably have sweat out a little less because there's less surface area. And we'll just pour it off. Whereas these ones, we're actually gonna press them to push a little bit of the excess water out. So it'll be a more delicate pickle. Okay, so this is a quick pickle, right? Because we're not going through the full process. It's a quickle. But as we had the question, what are kind of other things that you can pickle? You can definitely pickle carrots this way. You can pickle cauliflower. I really like doing like bell peppers this way. It makes a really nice topping to throw on top of, like if you roast a chicken or you roast tofu, little pickled bell pepper is really great. Pickled onions, obviously, this is great for red onions, and then you throw them on top of tacos or baked potato. I love having pickled onions in my fridge. What else can you make? Is there anyone out there in the crowd that does pickling or has favorite pickles to eat or make? You can also pickle things that aren't vegetables. You can pickle certainly fruit, right? You could do something like this on a tomato and make it kind of a pickled dressing. Jeffrey says he loves pickled tomatoes. I love pickled tomatoes. You can do the red ones and kind of make them soft and fresh, or you can pickle the green ones and make them more of a traditional long-lasting pickle. Pickled green tomatoes are fantastic. I love the traditional Japanese pickles, like little daikon and like, you know, the red ones and the yellow ones. I don't even know what they are, but I like, you know, you get them in little vacuum packages and you can just eat them. I love a classic American pickle with the cucumber and, you know, the dill and all of that. You can pickle meat. Pickled pig's feet and pickled fish are common meats to pickle. Let's see. You could pickle eggs, maybe not with this recipe, but I do like preserved eggs. If anyone's had the Chinese like tea eggs, I love making those. I love boiling a few of those at the beginning of the week and soaking them and letting all those spices sink in, and then you have a great snack any time. It sounds like we may have things coming in on the chat. Do we have things coming in on the chat?
Yes, we do. A couple questions here. Let's see. Can we make watermelon pickles in this recipe?
You could try. I never have. My understanding is if you do, you might need to soak them longer, just because watermelon rinds tend to be a little tougher. If you are looking for something cool to do with this recipe that's a fruit, you could try pickling mangoes with this. If you have a green mango, you could slice it up into really thin juliennes, and then all the ways that I said to use carrots with this recipe, you could use with green mangoes.
What about beans? Beans is in here.
Oh
Green
yeah,
beans,
definitely. You could definitely pickle beans. I'm thinking like of the long, skinny, like French beans. You could definitely do those. You could also probably blanch those first if you wanted them to be very tender.
Someone's mentioned pickled eggplant is a favorite.
Ooh, eggplant sounds great. You can really pickle just about anything. Sometimes when I teach this class, I get asked what a pickle really is. And so a pickle is really anything that has been preserved in either vinegar or salt and sometimes both. And it's a way of preserving it. These ones we're preserving really the life cycle a few days, but if you make them with different processes, you can pickle things to last for months, or if you have like access to really great equipment, it can last years. Fermentation is different from pickling, but kimchi is both a pickle and a fermented food. So you can have what we're doing, which is a pickle, and you can have kombucha, which is a fermented food, or you can have kimchi, which is both. And I think I've heard that that's what makes it so good for your digestive system. I also really love kimchi because it is so tasty. You can eat it raw, you can cook it. I love making a kimchi pancake. Oh, vegetable pancakes are another one of those things where you can just do a ton of stuff.
What would you do differently to make it last longer in the fridge?
So generally when we're talking about making pickles that last a really long time, we're going to talk about making a brine solution that you boil and then you pour into sterilized jars. Then you put the vegetables, fruits, meats, eggs in, and you seal it. You seal it with a vacuum seal. And that is a way to let it pickle in a sterile environment. And that's really what makes it last longer, is that sterile environment. So nothing's getting in that could have it start to decay. And all of the processes kind of in between will let things last a little longer, but maybe not as long as that. So if you make a pickle that includes boiling the mixture, it'll be relatively sterile. And then if you put it into a jar, but you don't do an airtight seal, or something that keeps everything out, that'll last longer, but not long as the full process. Does that answer your question? All right, I see the thumbs up. Great. Let's see. Well, we've got a minute left in our 10-minute, what do we call this? Salt bath? We can call it a salt bath for cucumbers. So, usually I just pour this into the sink, but I want to kind of help you guys see what's going on. So, I'm gonna grab a bowl. I'm going to come back up to the front. And you can see there's a little bit of, how can I make you see this best? I will hold them up and then I will pour the water off. You can see just in 10 minutes, we already have maybe about a teaspoon of water that's come off those ones. This isn't the best camera in the world. You might not have been able to see that. Let's try again with these ones. Stop the timer so that doesn't get us in the end. So, ooh, you can see how floppy they've gotten compared to how they were before, right? They're much, much floppier. That's all the water coming out. I'm gonna push them up to the side. I'm gonna try to pour it out so that you can see how much water we're losing. About another teaspoon, but then I talked about squishing, right? Squishing some extra water out. To do that, you just kind of very gently press, very, very gently pressing and squeezing the cucumbers. I want to do this gently enough that it doesn't damage them, right? We don't want to force them and bruise them and squish them into icky messes, but we do want to see if there's a little bit of extra water that we can squeeze out. So let's see how we did. That was some very, very gentle pressing. maybe another half teaspoon. There we go. You don't have to be incredibly precise. I like pouring off the water because it means I have a more concentrated brine when I pour in the other ingredients. And it also means that if I over salted them, I wash some of that salt off. If you want to do this double time, you could put in twice the salt, pour it off, and then actually rinse them to get some of that extra salt off. So even though this is a fast process, it could be even faster. But, you know, we didn't need to do that tonight, did we? Let's add in our other ingredients. We're gonna make our brine. We're gonna add our brine in, and then we'll let it sit for another couple of minutes while we talk about cleavers a little bit. I'm gonna make sure that I'm using the exact recipe that I sent you all. So I said 4 tablespoons of the vinegar. That means 2 of them in each of the mixtures. So 1, 2. Usually when I'm cooking this myself, the spoon isn't here and I'm just going glug, glug, glug. But we say 1, and then we say 2. And then I said 1 teaspoon of sugar, which means we need half for each. We go to my sugar bowl, half there, half there. And then I said 2 tablespoons of sesame oil, so 1 tablespoon each. It smells so good. Love this smell. This is one of my favorite smells in the whole world. All right, and then you can see on this side I had all my necessary ingredients, and then on this side I had all my fun ingredients, my optional ingredients. So I'm gonna swirl this around. You can see that we're distributing it over all of the cucumbers because it's a really tight brine. You might think of like pickles in a jar where you have the jar and it's full of liquid, and then the pickles are kind of floating in the liquid as if they're suspended in it. That's not really what's happening here. Let's take a look up. You can see they're definitely wet. They're definitely covered in the mixture, but they're not floating in a sea of brine. And that's okay because they're evenly coated and it'll soak in slowly. At this point in time, you really want to taste test the recipe to see if you did it right. I'll wipe my hands off. Don't worry, this towel will go straight into the wash since now it's got all that oil and sugar and everything over it. I think they're a little salty, for my taste at least. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in just a little more sugar and a little more vinegar to help balance that out. I find that depending on how big cucumbers are and how watery they are and how I'm feeling that day, sometimes I need to address those changes by adding a little of this and a little of that. If you're adjusting on your own, I would suggest probably measuring until you know exactly how much of each ingredient you like. And then as you become more confident, you don't necessarily need to measure anymore. You can just kind of wing it. All right, so there we go. Oh no, just a minute. I don't know if your screen went dark, but mine did, so I'm coming for you. I'm coming to save you. There we go. Now I can see you again.
We didn't lose you at all.
Oh, well then I just made myself look very foolish for no reason.
You warned me ahead of time, don't worry.
I did have to log back in though, since my screen was dark. And I'd be very afraid to be doing this without being able to see you all. I'd probably be doing everything off screen. I'm gonna taste it again. It's much better. It is much closer to what I want it to taste like. Oh, you know what else you could add? Speaking of the fact that I don't like them super salty, if you like it salty, if you like salty foods, may I recommend fish sauce. It has a really strong, pungent smell. It really does taste like, well, no, it smells very much like seafood and salt, like a dried fish almost. But then when you sprinkle it over your food, it becomes much more subtle than it smells. It gives it a nice salty kind of umami flavor. So if you're interested in trying fish sauce, I would say rinse the salt off after step 1 and then add a little bit of fish sauce in when you're making the brine. We've got a lot of optionals here. We've got cilantro, we've got chili garlic, got basil, cilantro, garlic, parsley. And while I know that you can't necessarily taste these with me, I thought it would be fun to ask, would anyone like to see how any of these in particular get added to this as kind of an add-on mixture? We have 2 groups, so we could do 2 different types of add-ons if we want to compare the flavors. I will narrate to you how they taste. Does anyone have anything in particular that they would like to see added to these pickles?
Is there anything you would do to make it spicy?
If I was going to make it spicy, I love some fresh little bird's eye chilies sliced up in there, or I would love to do the chili garlic.
Ah, great.
Is that a vote for chili garlic?
That was just a question from me. We've got one for cilantro, but yeah, we can do the chili garlic.
All right, so this has
Cilantro
been the
and
last
chili.
call. Right now we have a vote for chili and a vote for cilantro. All right, I'm gonna move these off the cutting board so I can use the cutting board again. So with cilantro, I know that a lot of people only really use the leaves. So they would take a bunch like this, and then they would kind of go la 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 and pick off the leaves and kind of very daintily sprinkle those in. And that is a lovely, lovely, picturesque way to do it. It looks very nice, but I really value efficiency. So what I do, and because I value a low waste kitchen as well, is I take a bunch like this. I'm gonna rinse it because they're very fresh and a little bit dirty. So excuse me. Obscene magic. They couldn't see her. They heard a noise. And then we're back with fresh, clean herbs. So here we are. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tilt you back down so you can see the cutting board. I'm gonna get my cleaver. I'm gonna cut off the ends. These ones in particular, if you see, they include the root, and I don't want to eat the root, but you can eat the stems. No matter what anyone tells you, the stems are delicious and entirely edible. So I'm going to chop it up super fine. Remember, I'm going to push and I'm going to use my hand like a claw to protect my fingertips. Chop, 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 chop. If you wanted them to be super fine, you could then use your cleaver to push them into a pile, and you can use it like a mezzaluna. If you've ever used a mezzaluna for chopping herbs, a cleaver pretty much does the same thing. You chop them up super fine and kind of push them into a pile again. Right, so I don't know if I have told you how much I love a cleaver. A cleaver, of course, it can chop, right? We've seen it chop cucumbers. I've said it can chop meat and bone. Of course, we've just seen it chop herbs as if it was a mezzaluna. We saw it smash things, right? Obviously, because we smashed the cucumbers. But you can also use it as a big old spatula to pick up your ingredients like this and pour it. And pour them into your mixture, right? So we'll come one more time. We'll kind of scoop up, being careful of your fingers, and push it down. Now, I know that a lot of home chefs think of like the Asian santoku knife, the Asian chef knife, as a chef knife that can do everything, and it can, and I do love my chef knife, and I use it a lot. But in Chinese, in Cantonese, we call a cleaver like this. We have multiple kinds of cleavers, but we call a cleaver like this Toydo, and it's designed to be a utility knife. It has a really nice weight, and it can do a lot. You can do a lot of really fine cutting with it, despite how it looks. All right, so here we have the cilantro mix. Herbs always stick to your hands so much once they're combined with oil. This is the cilantro mix. You can see a nice little bits all over it, and if I eat it, that does lend a very lovely herbaceous botanical flavor to it. Someone once told me the way to tell apart parsley and cilantro is cilantro will make your food taste like it's Mexican food, and parsley will make your food taste like Italian food. It's a good shorthand, but I have to say that there's a ton of cilantro in Chinese cooking as well. So you could also say cilantro will make your food taste like Chinese food. The other vote was for chili garlic. I am guessing the vote was because, not just because people love a good spicy thing and love to see me eat a good spicy thing, is because you're wondering how much chili garlic paste can one pickle take? Let me tell you, it depends on your tolerance level. I am gonna start off with a half a teaspoon. I think that is a pretty safe amount. So half a teaspoon, pop that in, and we're gonna go up a half a teaspoon at a time until we find like this is the spicy limit. And for this, I actually am going to use a spoon to stir it, because the worst thing in the world is to start cooking with a spicy pepper or something and then go and wash your hands and realize you can feel the hotness of the pepper still on your fingers, and then you're afraid to wash your face. You're afraid to eat other foods because you can feel the hot spiciness. I once, when I was very young, cooked with a habanero pepper, and I didn't wear gloves. And I'm pretty sure I could feel it underneath my nail beds for a full 3 days after that. All right, so here is half a teaspoon. And I would say that I'm a person who really likes spice, but I'm not necessarily a person who is very spice tolerant. I'm not the person who goes in and orders ghost pepper chicken wings at a restaurant. So don't worry if I say it's hot, or if I say it's not hot. you can imagine that I am not, I'm a good bellwether for this. At half a teaspoon, yes, you can definitely taste the chili garlic. It's a little bit hot, but it's more of a feeling that's localized to your tongue. It's not spreading all over your mouth. Perhaps if you ate a few more, it would, but this is not intolerable. In fact, it's just kind of a hint. If you want to get that nice, I can get the chili, but I can't get the garlic yet. So I'm going to go for another half teaspoon. This is a really excellent way to start adding spice to your food. It's to add a little bit and then taste test it. And if you are very cautious, you might want to eat 2 or 3 pieces because, you know, sometimes spice builds. Sometimes the first bite isn't so bad, and then by the time you're halfway through a dish, you are just burning up. This is 1 teaspoon. Oops, I'll keep using this spoon. You can see I'm spending plenty of time chewing it so that I know really how bad it can get. You know, honestly, I don't think there's a big difference between half a teaspoon and 1 teaspoon. At this point, you might be tempted to say, well, in that case, I'll add a whole nother teaspoon, right? But we're not going to do that. We're going to proceed cautiously because we are cautious cooks. I will do 1 more half teaspoon. It'd be so embarrassing if I went straight for another whole teaspoon and then I said, oh, no, 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 this is too hot. We should have done less. You can always add more. When it comes to flavoring, you can always add more. It's a lot harder to take it away. So here we go. All right, now with 1.5 teaspoons, over half a cucumber, now I can feel the heat starting to travel to the back of my throat, starting to infuse the rest of my mouth. I would say if you're a person who can't handle heat, this would be a really good place to stop because you can feel it. You can taste the chili, you can taste the garlic. It's a nice warming taste, but it's not going to burn. If you are a heat fanatic, you could certainly keep going from here. But this is a good amount for if you're looking for flavor and not quite yet looking for heat. And of course, since we did, you know, 1 cucumber here, we would double that if we were doing a whole cucumber, and then it would be 3 teaspoons. So there you have it. I've got chili garlic cucumbers smashed. I've got cilantro cucumbers sliced and pressed. You can also use chili flakes for this, or like a cayenne pepper if you wanted a little heat and didn't have anything super fresh. Reminders, now that these are done, I would probably want them to sit in the fridge for at least 15 minutes before I serve them. But you can have them in the fridge for up to 5 days if you'd like to snack on them or have them as a side dish. You will not be surprised to hear that they're not particularly filling. They do not count as an entree. You'd have to eat a lot of cucumbers to be full for an entire meal, but they are a great side dish. If you need something to cleanse your palate, if you need something to eat between spicy food, if you need something to eat between fried food, these are great with fried chicken, kind of cleanses the palate. If you need something to add on to sandwiches as a little bit of interest, or, you know, if you're just kind of looking for something to snack on. So now I believe we've got just about to the end of our time, but does anyone have any questions before we go? Sorry, I should tilt that up just a little more so that you can see my face as we do questions. Otherwise, I suppose you can watch me eat pickles for 3 minutes as you go.
Let's see. Would you ever combine cucumbers and tomatoes for this process?
If they were green tomatoes, I would consider cubing them, or if they were very small green tomatoes, I might consider slicing them. But I think while you could use the recipe on both cucumbers and tomatoes, I don't know if I would mix them because I think the size of the tomato that I would want to pickle would be bigger than the size of the cucumber. And then they would brine at different rates and you might get a little bit of unevenness with the pickle. That being said, I certainly challenge you to try it because I am a big fan of experimentation. So I could say, I don't know if that sounds like a good idea. It might be a little strange, but that shouldn't stop you.
Let's see. Sliced tomatoes, do you think they would fall apart?
If they're red, if they are a ripe tomato when they're sliced, yes, I think they would fall apart. You might be able to offset that a little bit by maybe slicing them into wedges and clearing out some of the middle. The middle is the goopiest part. But if you use a green tomato, I think they would stay together quite nicely.
All right, well, if we don't have any other questions, Molly, thank you so much. I picked up a couple tips, so I'm definitely watching this again and I'm gonna try my recipe out.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you everyone so much for coming to join me.
Yes, everyone, thank you. And this again was recorded, so it will be available probably in a couple weeks after we get it transcribed for closed captioning. All right,
Great.
well, thanks again, everyone. Have a good night.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.